Welcome to the search bar where we're talking about Google and if Google favors big brands. So for many years, there's been a lot of organizations that have accused Google of favoring really large companies, big brands in their search results. And that can be frustrating because maybe you're doing a search for a certain type of product and only the big brands are coming up, and the smaller mom and pop shops who might do a really fantastic job at that as well aren't showing up and they're not getting visibility. And maybe they're working really hard at their SEO, they're creating great content, but they're just not getting the traction they want. So Melissa's here with me today. And I mean, we've heard this for years, and this is definitely something that a lot of marketers have become frustrated with. Does Google favor big brands? Does Google give them an unfair advantage?
I think we have to break down a little bit of what you're saying here. So does Google favor big brands? I'm going to say no on the like surface level of it. Yes, when you actually start to break down what's actually happening. So let's look at the no portion first. So is there something within a Google algorithm that is actually saying, if this is checked, yes, this is a big brand, then give it favorable rankings? I do not believe that there is anything within the Google algorithm that gives any sort of favor to a big brand. Even recently, Danny Sullivan, so Google's liaison, had come out and answered a question that he had received with the same thing. And he said, no, there is nothing within our algorithms that points to big brands getting more ranking ability within Google search. Now, let's take the yes part of that answer.
So yes and no.
Yes and no, because like they don't have anything that by default says big brands are going to receive more value. But Google's approach has always been to go after the best user experience. They're trying to best mimic online what happens in the offline world. So the way that we think about how we as human beings interact, not just with each other, but also with different brands, we also give like passive authority to brands that we don't even know, but we've heard their name before. So an example is, if you're going around getting, like if I talk to your mom, like my mother-in-law, and ask her, hey, what's the best vitamin brands that you have loved and used over the time? Because she's been a health nut for a long time, so she knows these things. And if she says something like Solgar, Now Foods, or Nature's Bounty, I know Now Foods. I haven't ever used them, but I recognize that name. And so by default, I'm going to give Now Foods passive authority, where Nature's Bounty I haven't heard of and Solgar I haven't heard of. And also it sounds like kind of like a weird name. You see what I'm saying? Like I just don't have any referential points towards them. And so by default, I'm giving Now Foods, even though I've never used them, preference in the three answers that she gave me. So Google will do the same type of thing because it's trying to mimic what users interact with. So if we do a Google search for what are the best, well, for just vitamin brands, and it gives me those three, so let's even say it comes Nature's Bounty, Solgar, and then Now Foods. If I'm scrolling through, and I see that one, I might click more often. So that click-through rate on Now Foods, simply because more people have heard of that brand's name before, even though they don't know anything else about it, that click-through rate is going to essentially over time give it that preferential passive authority that Google's then going to say, hey, like Now Foods seems to be something that people interact with a lot more, so I'm going to rank it higher. So it doesn't matter if it didn't do as great of a job from a traditional SEO approach of getting keywords here and getting all these backlinks and whatnot. This is where this new world that we live in, where thinking about the full spectrum of marketing, whether it's paid, owned, or earned media, is going to actually shape what happens within organic rankings within Google. And so that's where we have to by default say, well, it looks like Google is giving, preferential treatment to big brands. It's not them, it's because we do. And Google is following our notions, our interactions, what even we might lie to ourselves and say like, "Oh, I don't have brand preference. Why is Google giving brand preference?" Like, no, 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 no. Let's be honest. Like we all do. Even if we don't know if it's positive or negative, and that's why you hear all the time, like, no bad press is bad press. Bad, it can be good press because at least your name is known then. It's, same thing for a product. It's that same type of way that works is what's happening within the algorithm because we're humans and we will click on things that we've heard of before. We'll give it more trust than anything else.
And if you think of it IRL in real life and you go to a mall and you're walking through and you see, 3 stores that sell shoes and one of them is Nike and you don't recognize the other 2 brand, I mean, you're probably more likely to walk into the Nike brand. People just like things they're comfortable with. They like things that they've heard of before, generally, for the most part. And so what you're saying does make a lot of sense. And I'm thinking about like Google autocomplete. So when you go to Google and you do a search and you type in, S and it starts to fill in shoes.
Yeah.
You type in shoes and maybe it says shoes from Nike.
Yeah.
And that's one way. And I'm a small business owner. Like I want small businesses to succeed more.
Yeah.
On Google, in search, online. I want to beat the big guys and the big corporations, and it can be really frustrating. And so something like that seems frustrating on the surface. But at the same time, shoes from Nike is what people are searching for and looking for more than shoes from, whatever smaller brand that might be. Yeah. And so I think it makes a lot of sense. And another thing that Google does is it can tell how long people are spending on websites. It watches how people interact with websites, which is kind of creepy, but it does it, especially if you have Google Analytics installed. And Google does see more people going to these bigger brands' websites. So again, it is a little frustrating. I would like it, and I think Google should put a little more preference to the quality of the content, to how long people are spending, reading like high quality content and things like that, and a little less on the brand. But then I totally understand this dynamic at the same time. And it's just, this is where, building the visibility of your brand, the quality of your products and services is valuable because it's not just doing, simple SEO fundamentals that gets you visibility. It's also building up your entire brand and having great customer service and having great marketing overall.
Yeah.
And it's just building the quality of your organization too.
Yeah. And I would say some of this, so Drew works on the small business side. I work on the big brand side. That's where we differentiate a bit more. And what I will say is that what I've seen over time is that the bigger brands look at their entire full marketing approach, again, paid, earned, and owned, and what they do in all 3 of those spaces, where I do see more of the small businesses sometimes, whether it's a limit of budget or goals, or just, you only have so many resources, to their disadvantage, they only usually put more, like a little bit into one of those. And so there is an advantage that big brands have because they become that well-known household name because they put a little bit more effort into that. And I will say sometimes I have seen other bigger brands will take a bet on themselves and go a little bit more, not into debt, but they'll put a little bit more in there with more of a roll of a dice that this will work out to them on a long-term scale versus a short-term scale. So I'm sure, like me, you have heard many accounts on social where Amazon was negative for a long time until it became go into the positive. There are a lot of stories of what we now know as big brands. When they started out as small brands, they were making big bets. So they took on more debt. They took on more going in the red because they had a really long-term vision that would get them not just into the green, but real deep into the green. And so I say that, and I bring that up saying that it's not just about what you do organically, but particularly in this day and age of how everything works together in a matrix, it is also about what you do on social, and not just doing some social organic posts. It's about what you do on the paid side. It's about what you do in connecting with your community. It's about what you do on the offline side of social that then gets translated into the online side of social. So like meetups and getting together with, or like run clubs are real big right now. So like Aloe has had a really good success by having like run clubs that they do offline that then come into their online world. It's about thinking about owned, earned, and paid. You can swing some of this to your side by putting a lot of money into paid. So like when you have a brand new product release, it does make sense to put a lot more effort into paid so that you have banner ads and advertorials and just things all around the web and all around, social and other places that get your name popping up so that when you then show up, what used to be a no-name brand showing up within a Google result, hey, I recognize Now Foods. It goes back to what I said earlier. I recognize Now Foods. I don't know why, but I know that name compared to Solgar and Nature's Bounty, and so I am now going to click on that. And then the same thing can happen from an earned and owned perspective as well.
Which is why, and we talk about this, never put all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
Like you have to diversify. It always makes sense to have a more comprehensive marketing strategy rather than just doing ads or just doing this or just doing that. Really, really important to do, especially when it comes to this.
Yeah.
So there you go. Hope that's helpful for you. Reach out if we can ever give you a hand with any speaking events. It's something we do quite a bit. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thanks, and we'll talk to you next time.